With the new featured exotic armors list comes fresh builds, and with it, some that are whack and some that are wild. So let's talk about Contraverse Hold. Contraverse is pretty hot right now, and for good reason. Among the long list of exotic and ability changes that have come out with Ash and Iron, both Contraverse and Chaos Accelerant were buffed pretty significantly. Contraverse grenades now apply weakening, and Chaos Accelerant grants an extra grenade charge, which combines for really high damage and essentially infinite grenades. With Void's incredible survivability through Devour, as well as mods like Ashes to Assets and Firepower, it's the perfect exotic sure to make any grenade enjoyer as happy as could be. I, however, don't really fall into that camp, and likely controversially have come out the other side of my time using Contraverse with a bit of a different opinion. While very potent and easy to use, they're defined mostly to me by their boring playstyle. Yes, the numbers are big, and yes, you can get a lot of kills, but the gameplay can often feel like it boils down to just jumping around and charging your grenade over and over again. After throwing hundreds of these grenades while putting the build through its paces, I very quickly began to dread that charge animation, with each one feeling like it took longer than the last. Now, I know this is not the case for everyone, and this is likely not a popular opinion, so I just want to get out ahead of this and make it clear that in no way do I think that Contraverse is bad, or that you shouldn't use them, or anything like that. In fact, I know that they're extremely good, and that a lot of people are going to love them, but every player has different tastes and playstyles, and Contraverse simply just doesn't fit mine. I personally don't care about using what's good. I always want to use what I find fun and interesting, even if it's not the highest damage output or the flashiest build. The purpose of this series was always to strive to make something fun, and I try my best to keep that sense of fun at the forefront of the videos. I'm not any sort of authority on Destiny, and I certainly don't want to be one, and I'm not here to tell you what's meta or S tier, since there's more than enough people that are fiending to do that already. WACK was always meant to be a sort of time capsule for the builds that I made during Edge of Fate, while also being a chance to share the creativity and joy of build crafting and have discussions about the fun that I had along the way. Just as with any opinion or review, how that fun is defined is entirely subjective, which I think is a really interesting topic, and is once again why I want to stress that your mileage may vary. I encourage you to give Contraverse a try for yourself if you haven't yet, since this build might be the right fit for you, and you might enjoy what it has to offer. So with that in mind, let's quickly talk shop so you know what I was working with, and I can give you some more of my thoughts afterwards. This build of course uses Chaos Accelerant for the first aspect, to take advantage of Contraverse, and Feed the Void as the second so you can get Devour on any of the grenade kills. For fragments, Echo of Expulsion adds an extra explosion from any ability kills to juice the grenades up a bit more, and Echo of Harvest generates orbs since Contraverse now weakens. I also went with Echo of Persistence to increase the max time I had on Devour, and Echo of Reprisal for extra super energy. In all honesty, I don't think any of these fragments are must-haves for the build, so if there's anything you want to swap, I'd say go for it, you can't really go wrong. I did try each of the main grenades, being Vortex, Shatter, and Axion, with Vortex being my personal favorite of the bunch. I know that Axion darts are the talk of the town right now since they explode twice, track really far, and do a boatload of damage, but I just felt like I had the most fun with Vortex. You could go with any of the three that you like, but on paper, Axion darts are probably the strongest option. For armor mods, I would definitely suggest Ashes to Assets for the super generation from grenade kills, and Firepower to make some extra orbs. For your stats, do what you can to get as much into the grenade stat as possible, and you'll be generating a lot of orbs so you can use fonts to make up the difference, which I did here, settling with a stat of 151 and 2 grenade fonts. For the artifact mod, Shield Crush is a great choice since it'll net you an extra 25% damage to your grenades, but you do need a way to go Radiant or Amplified. The easiest way would be to use Fever and Chill and a Solar primary weapon so you can go Radiant off of the rapid precision hits. You could also use a Solar non-precision weapon like Wolfsbane, an example, which will get you Radiant off of 3 rapid kills. While this is a fun option, anytime you're swinging Wolfsbane, you're not throwing a grenade, which sort of defeats the purpose of using Contraverse, so I didn't run it myself. I ended up using New Malpays for barriers and unstops, with Ahab Char for overloads, and so I could activate Radiant with Fever and Chill. The heavy doesn't really matter too much, so I just went with Outrageous Fortune, so if I ever had a DPS, I had an okay rotation. I similarly don't think that your armor set is a big deal, since none of them have any options to synergize with grenades specifically, so I just went with Collective Psyche to increase the suspend time from New Malpays, as well as to up my Radiant timer from 10 to 15 seconds. And that's really about it. Unfortunately, another reason why I'm a bit so-so on Contraverse is that building around it feels kind of weird, since the entire build works almost exclusively around Chaos Accelerant and Feed the Void. Everything else just kind of isn't necessary, and while Ashes to Assets and Firepower are probably the only other big additions, you could skip them and still have the build work to probably 90% effect. I'd say one of the more interesting facets is trying to use Ahab to proc Radiant to get Shield Crush going, but it's really more of a nuisance than anything, since in the time it takes to plink away at an enemy until you're Radiant, you could just throw a grenade or two to make up for not having the buff. I always like to do a game plan section in the videos where I give you a quick breakdown on how I use the build, and I think this is where the problem begins to show, because it sounds something like this. For the game plan, you'll want to start the fight by charging a grenade and throwing it near an enemy. Once you've thrown the first grenade, you'll want to charge and throw your second one, while the previous one deals damage and refunds your grenade energy. If you see a champ, stun them before charging a grenade and throwing it at them, and then rinse and repeat. Now, obviously I'm being a bit cheeky here, but you get the idea. I think this build can often feel really one-dimensional, and while of course there's moments where you'll super or you'll maybe have to DPS a boss, I'd say 90% of my time, the best way I felt to use this build was to just walk around or jump around the room, throwing my charge grenades until everything was dead. While there were periods that I had more fun with Contraverse than others, it was always when I stopped throwing as many grenades and I started to mix in my weapons and other abilities, which just sort of felt counterproductive to the build. Contraverse is very specifically meant to be an ability spam exotic, and maybe it's just me, but spending 15 minutes in an activity holding my Q key over and over again isn't all that appealing to me. What draws me to build crafting and what draws me to Destiny is that there's so many different ways you can customize your playing experience with an endless sea of builds, weapons, exotics, and more that can all be tailor-fitted to any player and any playstyle. Someone can build around an exotic armor piece or a subclass completely differently than I would, and we'd each have totally different goals in mind, but both of us would be able to have that build work perfectly for us, and we can both have fun. I adore build crafting for that, and I'm motivated to come back to the game time and time again to try different exotics and put my own spin on them, using my favorite weapons, aspects, and fragments to truly make it my own. I recognize that for this reason, there's people out there who will feel that this build fulfills the perfect power fantasy of chucking these nuclear bombs around the battlefield, destroying everything, but I'm really just not that kind of player. I personally know that I really like to shoot my guns, which is why, for my style, I'm a big fan of summon builds. Yunoya is still one of my favorite exotics right now because it adds so much utility and solar synergy into your gameplay, but it doesn't take away from the chance to use your weapons as well. Pairing it with Hierarchy of Needs, both of those incredible exotics can work side by side without stepping on each other's toes, shining independently, but also synergizing to create fun, varying gameplay. Fallen Sunstar is another great example that was a total blast to use because the arc summons are really good right now, and it was fun to spam those abilities and have them do the damage they do, but it didn't feel like they got in the way of me using Trinity Ghoul to elevate the build even further. Regardless of the build, if you're using something that's well-rounded, in a minute of gameplay, you might slide behind cover and drop a rift to make a safe space, peek out and kill a few enemies with your primary, then you'll see a major, pull out your special, and take them down. Maybe right after that you get your grenade up, and you throw it to debuff a crowd or clear a couple ads out, and then you switch to your heavy when you see a champion, you stun it, and drop a super on it. That entire time you're doing these second-by-second calculations where you have to do anything from reload to manage your ammo and your abilities and assess the battlefield. You have to look and see where the majors are and whatnot so you can choose where you need to engage and how you want to use the build the best you can. With Contraverse, in a minute of gameplay, it felt like I spent 45 or 50 seconds of it charging and throwing grenades. There rarely felt like there was any variety or any sort of tactical decision I needed to make, and there's really no other way for me to describe it other than being pretty boring. So this brings me to an interesting spot, and one where I sort of need to plant a flag on what WACK or Wild is. When I set out to make the series, I did it with the intention of having fun and talking about that fun. It was never meant to be an assessment of the power of an exotic, but again, a measure of the enjoyment that I got out of using it, and a way to use that experience as a basis for a discussion about build crafting, Destiny, and again, fun. Content and social media, and even just gaming in general, has taken a very sharp turn in the last decade to have an extreme fixation on this sense of competition. Even in a game like Destiny, which can largely be an individual and independent experience, content and culture around the game is often made to convince you that there's a right or wrong way to play and that things are black or white. You either use what's meta or you're throwing. People seem to have forgotten about having fun. In Destiny and in all games, you can use whatever you want, play however you want, or learn whatever you want. So long as you're having fun, in my opinion, you're doing it the right way. That fun is different for everyone in an infinite number of forms, and you just have to find it. I don't believe in this idea that I or anyone else can tell you what that fun is to you. I can share with you what my experience is and talk about my perspective, but I cannot and will not speak for yours. I didn't have much fun with Contraverse, but I can recognize that they're extremely good right now. While there were moments that I did enjoy myself more, Contraverse just doesn't fit my playstyle, and I found them rather boring to use. As a result, I feel pretty mixed, and I could honestly take it or leave it. So in my opinion, Contraverse Hold is sort of whatever. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Just want to mention I'm going to be streaming on Twitch every Wednesday to Sunday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, which will be at twitch.tv/callmekimbo_. I'll link it in the description and on my channel page. I'd love it if you stop by. There's also a dim link down below if you want to give my exact build a try or if you want to use it as a base for your own spin on it. Subscribe to the channel to keep an eye out for more videos soon, and let me know in the comments what you think of Contraverse Hold.